Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for coming back if you've been here before, or hi, welcome if you're new. My name's Mickey, I'm a therapist, and we talk about therapist-y things on this channel. Today, we are talking about what a therapy session actually looks like, ideally a good one. I have made a video before, to be fair, it's very old, but I have made a video before about what to expect from your very first therapy session ever, but I want to talk about what to look for as like green flags in a good therapy session. So I have 6 tips for you today, and we're going to go over like what to look for, what are good things to be happening in a therapy session, and ideally what do we want to be happening. Before we do that, I want to give a quick disclaimer that all of the content on this channel and in this video especially is intended to be for broad strokes learning and education. This is not therapy. It cannot be therapy, never has been, never will be therapy. And while I would love to be able to therapize a whole bunch of people, you can't do that over the internet, and it's also illegal to try. So that's not what we're doing here. And if you need a therapist, there are always links in my description to go find one for yourself. Also, if you're new here, hi, thanks for coming. You should subscribe. It does really help support me and the channel and the stuff that we're trying to do here, and so I really appreciate you being here. Okay, the first thing that I want to talk about as a green flag is flexibility. When we talk about what a good therapy session looks like, sometimes folks can get bogged down into this expectation because media does a really bad job at representing what therapy looks like, that we will be pushed into talking about the same things, doing the same things, and also that like therapy is supposed to look a certain way. When I say flexibility, what I mean is that it is entirely common and also very clinically appropriate for some sessions to be like really heavily deep in the shit, talking about trauma, talking about childhood stuff, like really digging into the nitty gritty and having big feelings. And sometimes you're just gossiping about your work life or what's been going on that week, or just like general feelings that are lighter, little easier breezier, you know what I'm saying? This is perfectly okay and perfectly normal. Any good therapist will be able to flex with you, to adjust with you, and to honor. And not every therapy session needs to be a banger. We don't need to have times where we're just like punching people's emotional guts like every single session. Also, I think if that's what's happening, like it sort of begs the question about at what point a person is like learning how to rest and recoup, because that's just as valuable of a lesson in therapy as it is to work through the stuff and do the hard work. And so again, any good therapist will be able to practice that flexibility with you. The other thing about this that's important to point out is that yes, childhood work can be helpful and impactful, and also sometimes we don't have to do it at all. Homework can be, or like assignments outside of therapy can be helpful and impactful. Sometimes we don't have to do it at all. Good therapists will be able to suss out what will be helpful for you specifically and what things you need. And also, I just want to empower people to ask for what you need. If you're very type A, like myself, I love a good assignment. I love a good homework. And so I'll ask my therapist, like, what am I supposed to be doing? Help me. Like, what am I supposed to focus on before I talk to you next? But if you're a person who finds that like frustrating and just not your thing, also clarify that and ask for that. It is very much okay. And also, again, a green flag that a therapist would be able to be flexible with you in meeting you where you're at. Thing number 2 is time to ease into it, especially for a first session or for the first few sessions. When I say this, what I mean is that a good therapy session ideally looks like opening the session with being like, hey, hi, how's it going? How are you feeling? What's been going on this week? Is there anything pressing that's on your mind? Got any good gossip for me? Any stuff that you just really want to get off your chest? Because especially for the first few sessions when we're still feeling each other out and developing that therapeutic relationship, it's a lot to just lead with like, tell me your deep, dark secrets. That's not really fair. But even after we've become established and we do have that rapport, it's very important that therapists leave the ball in clients' court sometimes to give them the space to talk through what's important to them. And also, too, the really key thing about this, just for food for thought, especially if you are a therapist in training, sometimes folks will lead with stuff that you were not expecting, like things that you were not prepped for or prepared for that you didn't think to ask about. And those sessions can be so wonderfully meaningful to clients, but also impactful in their growth and their journey. So a good therapist will be able to take that back seat and to give you the space to get warmed up, to get into it before, again, we just start like yanking at your childhood trauma and all of your fears and insecurities and stuff like that. Thing number 3 is space to air out your sometimes big feelings, and also lots of validation about those feelings. When I say this, what I mean is that while yes, it is important for good therapists to be making observations, to be pointing stuff out to us, especially about like problematic patterns that we might have fallen into or ways that our brain is kind of dunking on us a little bit, it's also equally important for therapists to practice the skill of giving clients, again, like the ball in their court and giving them the space to talk about what's going on with them. Ideally, a good therapy session looks like a sort of exchange and an easy flow, but ideally, especially again, as we get further into things, therapists shouldn't be talking the whole time, especially if you feel like you're being over talked or like you're not really having the time and space that you would feel good about having. Please feel free to voice that, because it's not helpful or fair for therapists to just be like yamming on the whole time. And again, the work is in folks airing out their stuff and having space for their feelings, not in therapists just like telling you things and like shoving psychotherapy or psychoeducation down your throat. That's not what good therapy is supposed to look like. So again, I want people to know that like, yes, therapists will obviously help you and tell you stuff, but please don't be like intimidated or weirded out if your therapist is just kind of letting you be. Thing number 4 is encouragement to work out stuff on your own. Granted, we want to be doing this with guidance. That's like the whole point of therapy. But oftentimes folks go into therapy with the expectation that my therapist will tell me what to do. My therapist will give me the answers. And this can feel kind of intimidating for folks to be like, I'm going to go tell someone my problem and then they're going to tell me what's wrong with me and they're going to tell me how to fix it. But B, we can get locked into this expectation that I don't have to think for myself. I don't have to take the vulnerable choice of implementing my own solution or like ideas for this issue that I'm having. I can just default to asking this expert in the room what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Especially for those of us who are perfectionists, who are the gifted kids, or who have this like fear of being wrong or failing about stuff. This can be tricky. So ideally, good therapy looks like guidance again, and like, help to work through that, but also encouragement to say, it's your life. What matters is what will work for you, what feels like a good fit to you, and that you develop this skill of learning how to problem solve for yourself, to trust yourself, to value your own input, your thoughts, your feelings, all of that stuff. That's equally valuable and important learning. I might argue more so, honestly, than just having the answers for like the right thing to do in particular situations. And so again, I just want folks to know going in, therapy does not always look like your therapist just being like, you should do this. Sometimes it's a therapist saying, I don't know, it's not my life. What do you think you should do? What feels right to you? What would be the potential consequences or outcomes of that? Like, let's try it and see what happens. And if it's a disaster, then we can unpack it together. Thing number 5 is actually something that I say to my clients all the time, which is that change happens in the same way that your hair grows. When I say this, what I mean is that if you stand in front of the mirror every day and you try to figure out how much your hair has grown since yesterday, you will see nothing. And you'll start to feel frustrated, like it's not growing, it's not doing anything. Except that that's not how it works, right? The growth that happens at the ends of our hair is like so minute that it's difficult for us to assess on a day-to-day basis what exactly is happening there. However, if you take a picture of yourself today and then you take a picture of yourself in 6 months, you'll be like, wow, my hair grew a lot and I didn't realize it at the time. This is what change looks like in therapy. It is very normal and very expected for going to therapy, especially in the beginning, to feel kind of like, what the fuck are we doing here, right? Like you might have a couple of sessions where things are like really moving along. You're like, yay! And then things they feel like they stagnate a little bit. First of all, feel free to voice this to your therapist, because if you have stagnated, it's perfectly okay to express that and to want to work on that. However, I also want to encourage folks to exercise an attitude of patience around your change and your growth. Because again, if you are experiencing those like big breakthrough moments early on, we can get lost in this expectation that therapy should look like just fucking toppling over the previous expectations and the way that my life used to look every single session. And that's not how it works. Again, the things that I said earlier about learning how to rest, how to recoup, those are important. But also, human growth doesn't happen in this like linear or exponential way. It's entirely normal and also expected. And I would argue like the safest for our growth to happen gradually and to have ebbs and flows, and for things to happen in ways that aren't quite as discernible to the human eye, if you get what I'm saying. The last thing that I want to talk about is a thing that usually weirds folks out. And so I want people to know going in that this is a normal part and can be a part of good therapy, which is that sometimes there will be silence. I know that this is so deeply uncomfortable for folks. I get it. It is still kind of uncomfortable for me as a client, like on the receiving end of this, but it's for a good reason. Therapists learn in school that practicing the use of silence in session is actually a really valuable intervention, because part of the teaching and the learning that we want to be doing in therapy, first of all, is to learn how to sit with our discomfort. I talked about this in another video. I'll put the thing up there. But also that sometimes, again, in the way that giving folks space to warm themselves up and to just talk through what's on their mind initially can sometimes lead to folks talking about stuff that they didn't maybe expect to talk about. Silence can serve that same purpose. If a therapist is so uncomfortable sitting with silence that we try to fill it and we try to ask stupid fucking questions, then sometimes we waste your fucking time. That's not helpful. And so while silence is very uncomfortable, yes, it can also be a nice time for you to just reflect, like, how am I feeling? What's going on inside of me? Are there other things that I want to talk about? Is there anything that's coming up for me? And sometimes clients are like waiting for this opening to be like, oh, and also there's this thing that's come up. And so therapists sometimes are also just giving you space to, like, I don't know, in case there's something that's on your mind that you want to voice. Or usually this happens if it's like a vulnerable disclosure, that if a therapist asks outright, is there anything else on your mind? Folks will be like, no, it's fine. And that moment of silence can sometimes be a great window for someone to be like, I'm just going to blurt out this thing that's on my mind. I really need to get it off my chest. Please know that that's very normal. It happens all the time. And also that's the purpose. So just know going in, if there's a moment of silence or a pause, your therapist does not think you're awkward. Your therapist is not judging you. And we're also not trying to do any kind of weird psychological games. It's just a thing that is helpful for us, again, to give you space. I already told you, you get it. But just know going in, that might be a thing that happens and it's perfectly okay. I do want to be clear. There are lots of green flags or things that are typical in good therapy sessions. So just because I didn't list it here doesn't mean that it's not included in that list. I just simply don't have the time and the bandwidth to talk about all of the things that are good signs for good therapy sessions. Feel free to list in the comments what your green flags are about therapy if you have them. But also please know that therapy is ideally this flexible, sort of like living, breathing organism that's meant to change and flux over time. And you are always very much allowed to ask for what you need from a therapist, because again, good therapists will be flexible with you and will meet you with what you need. So if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. We do talk about stuff like this, but we also do a pop culture moment every now and again. So I'd love to have you stay for that, and then share the channel, share the video to help the channel grow and to help each other grow. And I will see you guys next Saturday. Okay, bye.